You hear about them in training, the horror stories of these certain groups and certain days at the parks, the groups that cause the trouble, the chaos, the bad behavior. They can't really be that bad, can they? Oh yeah, some of them are. It starts when you're in training. You hear the rumors, the said but unsaid things about certain groups at the parks that when they visit, it's just terrible. It's horrible. The misbehavior, the things that they're caught doing, the breaking of the rules, just the rudeness. And you're just kind of going, there's no way they can really be that bad, can they? Yeah, they can. There are certain groups, though, that definitely stand out above the others as really the ones that when you hear they're coming, you're like, oh no, it's going to be a horrible day. These are the worst groups that I ever had to deal with when I was working. Now, keep in mind, this has been a few years, so it has changed a little bit. One of the very first groups that we hated working with, we had some fun, but we hated, was grad nights. Grad nights at Disney were nights where the park was open overnight solely for high school seniors that were graduating. They would come in and they'd be the only ones in the park. The chaperones would come in with them, and typically the chaperones would then ditch all the kids. They would head off to the little chaperone area where they could relax, and the kids would be on their own. And you'll notice that pattern here in a little bit. What happens when you turn teenagers loose unsupervised on their own? Chaos. It took extra staffing. You would have to put cast members in rides like Haunted Mansion and Pirates and stuff like that to essentially pop out at the kids and remind them that they're being watched all the time, because otherwise they're doing things on rides they shouldn't. They may be hopping off the ride, they may be throwing things on the ride, they may be taking pictures, they may be doing other highly inappropriate things with each other. We would find them in the bushes, sinking in alcohol, sinking in drugs. I only worked a couple grad nights. That was enough. But I had one time I was walking off stage and I'd been having fun with the kids. And I walked backstage where they're not supposed to be. And here is this couple sitting right behind the wall. And I'm like, excuse me, what are you doing? First off, you're not supposed to be doing that. And second, this is a cast member, an employee area. Get out! Yeah, it was a mess. We had fun, but my goodness, they were known for the horrible behavior. It got to the point where Disney got so fed up with the behavior that they began cutting back the days. It just got to the point where they were getting tired of the expense of having to clean up, to fix everything that got broken, the extra security, and it's just a major pain. Grad nights were not fun. Kind of following up with that, where you would see a lot of the similar stuff, are the Christian days at various parks. I mean, and I saw this at every park I worked at and visited a number of them. Disney, it was the Night of Joy, which took place at Magic Kingdom when I was there, and then moved over to Studios, and eventually over to ESPN, and then it got wiped out. We attended the one at Universal. I've been to several at Six Flags. Silver Dollar City has its version, Young Christians Weekend. Yes, it's dubbed Young Heathens Weekend behind the scenes because of the misbehavior. And again, very similar to the grad nights. You get groups of teens that are brought in, and then the leaders say, go have fun, and turn them loose and go off on their own and leave all these kids unsupervised. You'd find them in the bushes again and backstage, the alcohol, the drugs, the misbehavior, the jumping fences. Tomorrowland, we had to be careful on the People Mover because with it being a slow ride in dark areas, and they thought nobody could see them. Guess what? It was a mess. They were rude. My wife was working at one of them. Keep in mind, my wife and I are ministers. She's working at a shop called Tom and Huck's Everything Store. And she's got a couple of ladies who walk in who are there rude, mean, start trashing the stuff. This is junk. Why would I spend that? What's wrong with you? Just really rude to her while they're wearing their Christian shirts. And then as they finally check out complaining and insulting, and then they tell her, oh, you really need to know Jesus. And my wife is kind of sitting there going, I already do. He's not like you. Honestly, as a minister, it was embarrassing. It really was. I would be backstage and telling people, we're not all like this. So if I can give a little background perspective on it and some of why it is so horrible. There is this idea in a lot of church groups that this is a great time to invite all these people who don't come to church that you don't know.
Hey, let's take them to the Young Christians Weekend with all the concerts. They'll hear a few notes of music and they'll go, oh, I need Jesus, and change their life.
This is the thinking behind a lot of it. And so then they get to the park and they turn these kids loose. The ones who never go to church, the ones who go to church because their parents force them to and don't really want to go. And you get this big group of kids that they really don't care about behaving. And then you turn them loose and don't supervise them. And, well, what are they going to do? So it's not really surprising that they're out of control and out of hand. But as one of those leaders, it was extremely embarrassing. It was frustrating because they were fun nights to attend, but not to work. Oh my gosh. These kids were just horrible. It was so bad, like I said, Disney basically, after a while at Magic Kingdom, they moved it over to Hollywood Studios because they figured it wasn't quite as popular a park, and it was still a pain, and it was still a mess, and they're still trashing everything. So then they moved it over to the ESPN zone, the Wide World of Sports. That way they could have the concerts. They didn't have the rides and attractions. It basically turned into a big concert fest, hoping again to cut down on all the misbehavior. And they finally just gave up on it. It wasn't worth the trouble. And honestly, it was a ton of trouble. Let's just say that just because somebody goes to church, it doesn't make him a Christian any more than going to McDonald's makes you a hamburger or sitting in a garage makes you a sports car. There's a lot of people that embarrass the snot out of me that way. And those were great examples of when I hated and had to sit there with my coworkers and went, please don't think we're all like that. We're not. We're really not. Following up with those, the next group that really stood out as bad was the cheerleaders. It's just something about teens. Have you noticed that pattern yet? That every single one of these groups are teens. Disney would host the World Championships for cheerleading every year. Maybe it was the U.S. Championships. Regardless, it was a big competition for cheerleaders. And so the cheerleaders, when they're at Wide World of Sports at Disney, what do? They go to the parks. In their groups, still all done up. I don't want to take anything away from the athleticism that cheerleading takes. Cheerleading is very athletic, but there's something about a lot of those groups that when they go to Disney, they shift into full rah-rah mode. They're at the parks, but they're wearing all the cheerleading stuff, and they want to do tumbling runs down the street. They want to do the stunts, which basically means building the pyramids or holding each other up or the somersaults down in front of the castle and get pictures of them doing this. We would have them wanting to do cheerleading routines in front of the trolley as it's coming down the street. You know, y'all aren't being real smart or safe here because there's no padding, it's concrete. That's going to hurt. They would be cheering in line. They would be cheering during shows. The one difference with the cheerleaders and the other youth groups is the leaders didn't turn the cheerleaders loose. A lot of times the leaders were there with the kids and encouraging them to do the loud cheers and the obnoxious behavior. And that was really frustrating when you see the leaders encouraging and you're kind of going, excuse me, you're the adult? Act like it? So cheerleaders were kind of frustrating that way. You'd get them together for a picture and then they would start wanting to do a stunt and you're going, not taking a picture of you going to get hurt or dying or anything like that. Stop it. I'm happy to get a picture of you posing, but we're not doing anything up. We're not doing anything in the air. No. And then they try to sneak it on you. It's like, I'm not dumb. It was amazing. You get them posed, and they think that in the time you put up the camera, all of a sudden you can't see what they're doing. And so then they think, hey, he's got the camera up. We're going to actually try and do a stunt now. And try to pick each other up. And you just put the camera down and go, nope, not gonna do it. Wouldn't be prudent. A lot of the cheerleaders were pretty decent, honestly. But they were just loud and annoying. The worst group, though, at least when I was there, and this has changed, you heard about this group in traditions at Disney. And the stories you're hearing, you're going, no. There's no way a group of people could be that bad. No way a group of people could be that bad. Oh yeah, they were that bad. It was the tour groups from Brazil and Argentina. Mostly Brazil, but Argentina was there as well. Loud. You'd see this mob come in of 50 to 100 people with the colored flags waving. And you're just like, oh no. Chanting, screaming during shows, during rides, during lines, during shows. Oh yeah, did I mention they like to do this during shows? Because they can't understand what's being said, so they just drown it out. If they didn't understand what was going on, they just made noise to cover it up. Because, nobody else mattered. Lines didn't matter. Now, I've met some wonderful people from Brazil and from Argentina. They come in as families, and they were great. They were fantastic. But these tour groups were a completely different thing. And the leaders at the time not only allowed the behavior, they participated in it. To the point where over the years, Disney has actually banned certain groups, and so behavior has gotten much, much better. If you see them now, yeah, they're still out there, but they're nowhere near like when I was there. Let me give you an example. I'm out one time in front of the park, in front of the train station, taking pictures of Mickey while Minnie is right next door. And we hear the group coming. And you look around behind you, because there's the entry gates, and here they come through the gates. Now, we're set up where Mickey has a line to one side of the train station, so they come up, get their picture, and then they can walk out. And Minnie is coming from this direction and walk out. So they're kind of lined up along the sides of the garden area, but out of the way of the picture. Here comes the group. Now, we've got one photographer for each character and 2 attendants. So there's 6 of us. There is at least 75 of these kids. Lines? We don't need no stinking lines. They just swarm and mob right at us. And we literally have to turn around, stop, try to keep them away because they're just running in. The family that's there, their poor pictures were just... Because these kids are like, we don't need to take lines. And they just swarm and mob. To the point where the 6 of us have to kind of huddle up, hold hands, and try to form a barrier around Mickey and Minnie. And we have to walk them off while all these kids are trying to push and shove to get to them. And walk them off stage, off to the side, through the tunnel, and then out the exit. With these kids pushing, shoving.
Mickey, Mickey, Minnie, Minnie.
Oh my gosh. It was one time I was honestly scared I was going to get seriously hurt. But I was more scared that Mickey or Minnie were going to get seriously hurt. It just completely out of control. That was not terribly unusual. They would swarm around the trolleys. Now, these trolleys are 2-ton trolleys. They don't stop. They would want to jump on and off while they were moving. They were just insane. Utterly insane. The craziest story, and I've been told, I'm making this up, that it's mythology, that you hear this story, but it never really happened. No, it happened. I saw it. I was out taking pictures over in Frontierland, and I hear the radio go off. Need security over by Splash Mountain. I was about done with where I was at, and I'm like, what's going on? I have been cross-trained in crowd control. Let me go over. Let me see if I can help out. And there is one of these groups of teens that's over at Splash Mountain. They were going to ride the ride, realized it was a water ride, and so they decided that they were going to change clothes. Out in the middle of everywhere where everybody can see them. They didn't go to the restrooms. They're just changing out there on the streets. Right in front of Splash Mountain, and you're just like, oh my gosh. Nobody wants to see that. And so I ended up, I kind of had to play crowd control up near the entrance and say, sorry folks, this area is closed for a little while because they're just dropping everything. And apparently this happens occasionally. It's happened more than once because I've heard other people tell similar stories. And you're just like, that doesn't really happen, does it? They don't really do that, do they? Yeah, they really did that. That was one of those days that after that whole deal and holding the crowd away so they couldn't get to where they were while security is trying to deal with them and tell them to get their clothes back on, and everything, and you go back into the break rooms and you just kind of sit there shell-shocked going, did that really just happen? I didn't actually have to just deal with that, did I? We had to be very careful when those groups came in to make sure that we funneled lines. You would actually see entrances to rides where they would have a wider opening. You would actually see them close that opening down some and narrow it so that they had to go single file versus a mob rush, because otherwise they would. Yeah, they were really that bad. I am grateful, like I said, Disney has taken steps now that those tour operators, if they were part of that group, Disney found out who they were and they banned them. Didn't allow them to bring groups anymore. In my last few visits, when I have run into those groups, they've been far better behaved, far better supervised. The adults have been on them. I've heard that they're still a little bit rough, but they're nowhere near what they were. We were in line for Harry Potter over at Universal, and had one of the big groups ahead of us. They were nice and quiet and polite, and where in the past they would have been screaming and yelling and chanting and singing, they were great. Like, that would have been fine when I was working, but it wasn't like that when I was there. Those are the worst groups we had to deal with. There were some others here and there, but far and away the ones you hear the stories, you're like, no, it can't be that bad. Yep, they were that bad. So have you run into similar groups in the parks? What are your experiences? I'd love to hear them, good or bad. Maybe you were part of one of those groups and you have an explanation. I'd love to hear it. Please share it in the comments below. Thank you again to all my financial supporters, my YouTube members, my patrons. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Thank you so incredibly much. And this time of year, I also want to say a very happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year. Thank you so incredibly much for watching. Whatever holiday you celebrate, may it be wonderfully blessed. Thank you so much. God bless. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts, your comments, your suggestions, your ideas. Be sure to share them in the comments below, or you can contact me. There's information in the description that has my email address, fan pages, information about merchandise, and so much more. So be sure to check that out. Don't forget to hit that like button, share the video, and if you haven't already, hit the button right up there to subscribe. And in fact, if you did enjoy this, I've even got another video for you right here. And also about these wonderful people here, those are my YouTube members and my patrons, the ones whose financial support makes this possible. I couldn't do it without them. If you want to know more about that and the perks that come with it, well, be sure to check the description. There's a link right down there. Thank you so incredibly much. God bless.